Hi, everyone. We're just giving a moment here for everyone who wants to join us to come into the room. I know you just attended a wonderful keynote uh, talk, and then we'll get going. I'm going to share my screen while we're having our folks join. No, that's not, sorry. One sec. There we go. Can you confirm that I'm showing the right screen? The view is a little different for me. One sec. Think I'm showing the right screen. But to be honest with you, my chat is buried behind another screen. So I'm going to trust that we are good to go. Welcome to this session titled Supporting Infants and Toddlers Connection with the Natural World Through STEAM. That's a long title and a short presentation, so we'll see how we do. My name's Tracy Johnson, and I work with West Ed and the Program for Infant Toddler Care, where I've been for over 20 years now. And we are a statewide training and coaching support network that is available to any program in California that serves infants and toddlers. That's family child care or center-based care, and family, friend, and neighbor. So my contact information will be on the screen at the end of our time together. And I'm happy to hear from you afterwards if we can be of any support to your infant toddler program. Primarily, as I said, we work with programs inside California. I understand we might have some international folks joining us here this morning in California time. So welcome. What I am going to focus on with you in our brief hour together is how to focus in on providing STEAM-related experiences for infants and toddlers specifically. And infants and toddlers in our world are children under 36 months. That's where we define an infant or toddler. And just to remind you, I know your keynote probably went over a little bit of this, but really the primary goal related to STEAM learning, STEAM, is to provide experiences to children that support really that native creativity and innovation that all children possess. Every child is born with these capacities. And remembering consistently that infants and toddlers come into the world as very naturally curious. They have that mindset just all the time. So what we want to do is support that natural curiosity in every way that we can without overwhelming these very young children. So that's kind of the primary focus of our session together. I'm just reminding you what these letters stand for, STEAM. To be honest with you, I constantly have to remind myself as well. The S is for science, the T is for technology, the E is for engineering, the A is arts, and I stole this image from clearly a British PowerPoint because in England they say maths plural, and United States we typically say math. So what I want to highlight here, again, as we focus on infants and toddlers, and I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox right now for just a minute. I don't want you to focus so much on the T, which is technology, because honestly, infants and toddlers can't make good use of technology as we think of technology. And in fact, much of the research shows that we should not be using screens or that kind of device with very young children. What they need to thrive in their interactions and learnings is the people in their life, the key element, the key adults, the key other children that they know well. It's in relationships and in interpersonal interactions where infant toddler learning occurs. So I want you to downplay the T. The technology is not something I'm going to be talking about. With older children, yes, and much older children, high schoolers, of course, middle schoolers, but we're talking about infants and toddlers. So I just wanted to highlight the fact that I'm not going to be giving you a lot of ideas about how to bring in technology into your work and care with very young children because it's basically developmentally inappropriate. Here are our main session objectives. What we need to continue to remember and focus on is that when you are thinking about infants and toddlers and how they learn, I want you to constantly remind yourself that everything that happens to them, what happens to them, what happens with them, and what happens around them is their curriculum. It's their life. It's every moment of every day. There's learning happening for these very young children. So honestly, it's fairly impossible to tease out what are STEAM related experiences from really the everyday experience of a child under 36 months. Everything that occurs to them happens with them and around them is having an impact. And it's either going to help them learn or perhaps hinder their learning. So, what we want to focus on when we think about how to infuse STEAM related activities into infant toddler care is that it's in your daily routines, caregiving routines with these very young children, and those interactions that you have. And I'm just going to call you all caregivers for the purposes of our session. It's in those interactions and how you care for these children that these STEAM related activities will be embedded. So we aren't talking about setting up special activities for STEAM learning with this very young population. Um, so if they are engaged in these kind of explorations and learning all day long, every day, then it might be, if you've had more experience with preschoolers or older children, that you're not noticing some of the learning that's happening with infants and toddlers. And the key to being um, appropriate, developmentally appropriate with these very young children is to really acknowledge and support and respect what they bring to their own learning. And that's what this slide is touching on, that we really need to respect and support each child's interests and natural curiosity and capabilities. And I'm talking about the very youngest infant. Children come into the world with natural curiosity and capabilities, and we need to notice and honor that. Also, this morning, I'll be trying to infuse some of the rich STEAM language or vocabulary that you might introduce into the play of a very young child while not drowning them in this kind of language, but also infusing, narrating what you see them engaged in. And then lastly, what I hope to provide to you in this time together is some ideas about how you can very intentionally set up your environment, bring in materials to support these very young children's already their skills. And what I mean by that is they're already competent problem solvers. They come with creativity. They will show persistence. And as we've already mentioned, great curiosity about the world around them. So we want to support their natural, innate capabilities. We don't have to teach them any of these things. I love a good quote, so you're going to get a couple quotes that have to do with our topic this morning. So I'm going to read this quote to you, and I can relate it to our session. This is from a medical doctor, Suzanne B. Monahan. I adore this quote. It's very inspiring. She says, "My wish is for every infant to be exposed to nature starting the first week of life. If children get an early and sustained exposure to nature, they will have the optimum potential for being and staying well emotionally, physically, and spiritually. That's very powerful. And what I'm going to hopefully share with you this morning is how that experience of being outdoors, which is one of the themes of this conference, outdoors in nature supports children's learning in all areas. And it happens to be today we're focusing on those STEAM skills. Um, I also want to just highlight that when we say time in nature, it doesn't have to mean that you live on a farm or you're out in a field somewhere. Many of you, I'm sure, are coming to this session today from highly urban or suburban areas. And maybe the only element you have of nature is a small patio or your corner park or even something less than that. So, all of these ideas that I'm hopefully going to share with you today will honor the fact that you don't have to wait until you're out in the forest to help children explore and learn from their outdoor environment. I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't just let you know about one of my absolute favorite resources in the entire world. It's called the Children and Nature Network, CNNN, and the reference will be at the end of this session. If you are interested in supporting children to learn outdoors in natural settings, their CNNN's library, research library, is one of the best I've ever found. And I could quote the research studies that they have done all day long. I won't today because we don't have time, but I really want you to be aware of this organization. They are brilliant. They have resources that will help you with any age range of children that you are working with. And so I just wanted to put that resource up front in this session. So Children and Nature Network, they have a really great conference too. So check them out and I'll give you that reference at the end. So what are we talking about specifically? When we talk about approaches to learning that infants and toddlers exhibit, so to speak, related to STEAM skills, I thought it might be helpful to kind of give you this little chart. And I will say I lifted this from an article that I also am referencing at the end of the session. What's important to remember about infants and toddlers as compared to older children, even 4 and 5-year-olds, is that infants and toddlers show their learning and skills in more subtle ways. So with a preschooler, you could hear what they have to say, and the child can be showing you on some level verbally what they know, what they understand, what they're thinking. With pre-verbal children or low verbal children, which would be infants and toddlers, we have to be far more observant to pick up on the cues, to notice what interests that particular child, or to acknowledge and notice what ideas that little baby might be testing out. And they are testing out ideas from birth. They are making hypotheses about their world and testing them and repeating those tests. And so our job as infant toddler care educators is to notice these more subtle cues, and they come in the form of behaviors from the infant or toddler. So on the screen, you see on the left, we have developmental skills that fall under when we talk about STEAM related learning. These are some of them, and on the following slide as well. So under executive function, which we're hoping to always support in every child, the observable behaviors you might see is that the infant persists. They continue to work at what they're interested in. They slowly develop confidence in their own abilities. They approach new experiences and take risks. They maintain their focus and sustain their attention. I'm not talking about for hours because, again, they're infants and toddlers, so their attention will be shorter. But for their age, they are absolutely capable of maintaining focus and attention. Under initiative and curiosity, we want to see that the child shows eagerness and curiosity as a learner, that they initiate actions with the materials that you have provided. that they want to get in there and explore. Under creativity and inventiveness, that we see these infants and toddlers experimenting with different uses for the objects that, again, you or their adult is providing, and that they are flexible in their thinking and how they approach these materials. In addition, these are also things that we want to observe for with infants and toddlers. So as we're thinking about how is this child doing in their exploration and discovery, we absolutely want to see that these young children are using all of their senses to explore. If if there's a very young child, say an infant, who doesn't use their mouth to explore something, that's what a primary way that infants explore the world is through their mouth and touching and biting and chewing. If you don't see that, it's unusual. That's an unusual behavior. We want to see them using their senses to explore. It's our job to give them safe ways to do that kind of exploration. Um, Under memory, we want to be observing that the child can recall past events, experiences to the level that's developmentally appropriate, and that they use their memory, that past information, in new situations. So that's part of their cognitive skill. Reasoning and problem solving constantly. We want to see that infants and toddlers are using a variety of strategies to problem solve and not always going back to the same strategy that maybe it's not working, that they are using their growing imagination, that they are exploring spatial awareness and these kinds of things. So it's very observable. You can watch carefully and see what and how infants and toddlers are learning. Another quote that's going to kind of turn us into a little bit more of a focus on nature and the outdoors for our session is this. This is from one of the Children and Nature Network research reports that I constantly am quoting. And the quote is, "Giving children the chance to play outside has myriad benefits, from physical activity to creativity, emotional health, social connectedness, and cognitive development, including the specific executive function skills that are so critical to a happy, healthy childhood and a fulfilling life." So very powerful. And the research shows that that is a very accurate statement, that outdoor play, especially in nature, will support all areas of the young child's development. So let's just talk briefly about some of the specific benefits in various domains of development when the very youngest children are taken outside and allowed to play out there and stay there for a little bit. Um, what we know from the research, again, is that children's play outdoors is different than play indoors. So that would lead us to believe their learning is a little bit different as well outdoors. And what the research shows is that children's play outdoors is more focused, it's more self-directed, and this one you probably thought of, it involves more movement. And infants and toddlers learn a lot through moving their bodies. The older we get, the less we move. But when you're new to the planet, I like to say one of the primary ways that very young children learn about their world is through their own movement of their body. So this kind of play outside is crucial. Also, outdoor play supports a level of inclusion for children with different abilities or delays in a very unique way. Um, it's providing outdoor play for all children gives a variety of active options of how to move their body. It engages children of all kinds of various fitness levels, ages, genders, and abilities. So just the act of being outside is more likely to support children of all kinds of abilities, not just delays, but everyone will be included. And in fact, in addition to just being outside, when you're able to provide natural, um, nature-based experiences, there's even a higher level of inclusion because you can just look at this as a picture of um, some logs cut in half, formed in a circle. You can picture a very young infant who might just be cruising would be hanging on and stepping from log to log. A 2.5-year-old who's figured out how to jump and leap would maybe be balancing on top of these things. A child who has limited mobility would use this in the way that makes sense for them. So using natural materials outside really does enhance inclusive care and everyone benefits. So I wanted to just highlight this important point as well. Okay, more about how outdoor play, especially with natural materials, supports the child's full development, not just cognitive development. But what we've seen through research is that outdoor play allows for increased social interactions between children, and a lot of learning happens in that kind of play between children. They don't always need us. They need their peers. A lot of learning happens between children in small groups. It also, when we're outside, there's more likely that there might be some care of plants and animals. Those kinds of interactions and experiences help build that child's nurturing behaviors. They learn how to take care of living things, whether it's a tomato plant or a guinea pig. So that kind of um, experience outdoors supports their social emotional health. And when you have a child who's very healthy in this domain, they are more likely to explore and stretch themselves to maybe try something new or try something in a little bit of a different way. And that becomes because they have a secure base that comes from the relationships they've formed with the important adults and children in their lives. So think of the relationship for a child as the launching point to all their learning and all of their feelings of security so that they're willing to kind of go out into the wild, so to speak. It could be a patch of grass, um, and explore that confidently. So that this directly impacts their learning. We also know from research that outdoor play supports more small group interactions. And when I say small group, I'm talking about small group of children, 2 to 3, 4. They also, children are more likely to engage in self-organized play when they're outside. And that simply means that they don't need the adults to say, now we're going to play duck, duck, goose or run around the tree or, here's a toy to play with. They actually direct and organize their own play. And I want to just put in a plug here. Again, we're talking about infants and toddlers. So one thing to really remember and think about, I want to see if I'm going to say it here. Yes, um, is that the younger the child, the smaller the group should be. And this is a tenet of PITC's philosophy. Infants and toddlers can't make great use of a large group of children or a large group of adults. It can be overwhelming. It can be too stimulating. They are having to adapt to a variety of styles from the adults and the children in the group. So the younger the child, the smaller the group that we should ask them to have to exist within in childcare. I know this is sometimes a difficult thing to achieve, but I want to put in a plug for the fact that many small family childcare programs in California, at least, which is what I know best, provide that small group. So there is a built-in benefit for very young children to be in that kind of a small program where they only have to interact with maybe 5 other children versus 20 other children. So I just wanted to put in a plug for our very hardworking family childcare providers because they have the small group setting already in place. Okay, let's look at a couple ideas around how, one, we know it's hard to get outside with very young children. They're not always mobile, so this is a challenge. So once you're outside, it's crucial that you have what you need in your environment, right? Otherwise, you're not going to stay out there or you'll never get out there in the first place. It's just going to be too hard. And so you need your equipment and environment to be as flexible and versatile as possible. And this supports your ability to get outside, as I said, but stay there and be able to care for a variety of ages. Again, if we talk about a family child care program, you may have infants to 7-year-olds. So you have to design your equipment and have materials that will address a wide range of children's ages. So I wanted to give you a couple ideas about some equipment that might meet this need. And so here, I found this on the internet. A brilliant gentleman designed this. It's basically just a table that could be a coffee table for an outdoor environment. And then this piece here, I hope you can see my cursor, um, slides under if you don't want to use it. And then the lowest piece can slide under that. So when the children aren't there, it becomes a coffee table. When you have a variety of children, these are slightly older children. So this level of a sandbox play or whatever would work for them. But maybe you have some crawlers or some new walkers down here, that level of height for the children might be the right thing for them. You can change out what's in the table. You could use it as a meal table outside. It's this kind of versatility and flexibility that I really want you to think about before you outfit or retro outfit your outdoor space. It's a great space saver too. If you have limited area, that's a great idea. You can make your own version of this if you have a friend who knows how to build. It's not that tricky. So I just want to give you a couple ideas about how do you make that space outside flexible and versatile. The other key element that I want you to think about here is that with infants and toddlers, the how how they are cared for during caregiving routines is a key element of how they experience their day. So, what I mean by caregiving routines, in case that's not a phrase that you are familiar with, is really those daily activities that involve meals or feeding, napping. Waking up from nap is also a caregiving routine. Hand washing, toileting, diapering, those kinds of routine activities that we have to go through with infants and toddlers. So I'm going to ask you this question, but I just want you to think of the answer in your mind. What percentage, if you're thinking about a 4 to 5 month old, and I know that's maybe younger than most of the children you care for, but let's think about a young infant. How many or what percentage of a child's day in childcare, say it's an 8 hour day in a care setting, what percentage of that day do you think a 4 or 5 month old is engaged in some kind of caregiving routine? It's either being done with them or to them or some element. So that includes, like we said, meals, hand washing, toileting, napping. So just think about that for a minute. How much of an 8 hour day in care might they be engaged in this kind of caregiving routine? And here's the answer. 80% of a young infant's day in childcare is likely to be involved in some of these caregiving activities. The younger the child, the higher the percentage that they're engaged in these kind of activities. So if that's the case, then we cannot just be thinking, oh, I just have to get through this routine with this little baby and get on to the real learning. That's not the case. The real learning is happening during the meal. The real learning is happening during the diapering. The STEM learning is happening during hand washing. All of these personal care routines are the learning. They are the curriculum for very young children, even toddlers. I'm not just talking about babies. So it is crucial that we approach the caregiving routines in a way that we capitalize on the learning that can happen. And one way that I think is very effective is to take these caregiving routines outside. And it can be done. I've lived in programs and worked in programs where we were very successful at taking these caregiving routines and doing them regularly outside. So let's think about what that might require of us. One, you need to have outside what you need to have to carry out the caregiving routines. So these are just a couple examples of some very low cost sinks. If you don't even have a sink outside, how are you ever going to be able to potentially hand wash outside or get ready for a meal by hand washing or wash up after a little experience with paint or something? So you want to have the equipment that you need outside. Um, it does not have to cost any money. I got this off the internet. It was because somebody had been donated an old sink they weren't going to use in their kitchen anymore, and they had a handy dandy parent who could just set it into a little frame here, and suddenly you are then more able to potentially have a meal outside because you could easily wash hands before or after. If you have to transition back and forth inside to outside for every one of these caregiving routines, it you won't do it. You won't do it, and the children won't thrive because too many transitions for this age group is a not a good thing. I will say briefly, I had a hands-on experience. My first job in the field 100 years ago was at a childcare center. Every meal that was morning breakfast type, lunch, and afternoon snack, all held outside. We didn't even have tables inside this childcare center. Every meal, we had an awning. It was not expensive. We had a work day, built an awning so we could be out there in the rain. It was in California and in Santa Cruz, so it wasn't freezing. But when it was chilly, we put on our jackets and we still ate outside. So that was just how we ran that program. It is possible. It is, you just again have to have what you need. And I'm pushing this because I want to remind you the bulk of these very young children's experience is in the meals, it's in the diapering. The play is around the edges, to be honest with you. The play and where we think we're setting up our activities, that's around the edges of their actual experience. So think about it. Think about how you can take those caregiving routines outdoors. You will enjoy them more too. I can guarantee it. Okay, I'm almost at halfway, or I'm probably at halfway. So the next several slides are just some additional ideas about um, potential natural objects that you could use as learning materials. And all of these will support STEAM learning in your infants and toddlers. I want to just acknowledge many of these photos come from a brilliant program called Stomping in the Mud Play Group, which happens to be up in Vancouver, Canada. So they know weather. If they can get outside, we can get outside down here in California. um, so these photos hopefully will inspire you to think about how very, very simple natural play materials also often offer to the child the most flexible kind of play materials. So natural often is open-ended. There's no directions to the child saying you only play with these pine cones in one way. They will do exactly what they need to do with the materials. And if we get kind of out of the way, their learning will be very deep as long as they're allowed to explore the materials in the way that makes sense to them. So we don't want to dictate how a child uses what we put out in front of them. Um, Also, a point I want to highlight here is if you look at these three different kinds of materials, think about the sensory input that this baby is getting through this. There's rough, there's bark, there's bumpy pine cones, there's kind of scratchy straw pieces here. When you want to enhance the learning, you want to make sure that that sensory input is part of it. Um, I also want to pause to just highlight that notion that I put out at the beginning, which is the idea of adding steam-rich language when you're potentially narrating children's play. Again, you don't drown them in the language, but you might comment on something that they're doing or what you think they're interested in. So if we're going back to kind of our STEAM frame for today, you might say to this child who's on the left, you might say something like, you have a stack of round tree slices. You're not asking him a question because don't interrupt him, peppering him with questions, but you might comment on what he's got. And when you use the word stack, that's actually an engineering phrase. That's how things are built. You stack them. So that's an E. That's the E in STEM. You might say you have a stack of round tree slices. There's the math. That's geometry. Round is a phrase that we take from our math learning. Um, for the middle picture, what if you commented something like, some of the pine cones tumbled out of the bin? You're stating the obvious, but for the child, you're extending their awareness of what is out and what is in the bin. Those are also geometric and mathematical concepts. So I just wanted to kind of give you an example of some of the language that you could infuse mindfully and thoughtfully as you narrate children's play. And it brings in that steam-rich vocabulary. Okay, we could do the same with this image. You might say here, again, I don't want to encourage you to just talk nonstop with infants and toddlers, but if you feel like the moment is right, you could comment on here, the leaves are crunchy. The crunch, I hear the sound. They're crunchy. That's science. Why is it crunchy? Why is that leaf crunchy when maybe another leaf over here isn't crunchy? That's science. We're not asking the child to respond to us, but we could pose the wondering, right? That's part of science exploration. Here, just to tell you what you're looking at is a scarf. It's just a scarf that's blue and white, and it's been kind of laid in here to simulate a river, kind of. So I also believe this touches on art because sometimes if you give children these materials, what they create can also be just a work of art. They will put things together in a way that is close to a Monet painting. So you can't tell me that's not the A in STEAM, excuse me. On the right, we have a variety more of the tree cookies, is what I call them in my world. They're cut into circles. I don't know if you want to use that phrase with infants and toddlers. Um, that you could comment or help them be aware of the bucket is full, or I wonder which has more sticks in it. Again, we're not sitting there waiting for an answer, but you can wonder with the infant or toddler as to what is happening with the material. Here's another example, and I want to highlight the fact that several of my photos are on this kind of a table with a lip, and that's wonderful for toddlers. They are humans who love to wipe off counters, and if you give them, they just do. They like to clean off counters like a cat. They like to wipe everything off. So if you find a table or a bin of sort that has this lip, it helps them stay focused because they can't just wipe everything off. They can't just dump it onto the floor. It sometimes helps their focus extend a little bit. Attention maintenance. So that's another skill we mentioned early on. These are simple terracotta pipes that you get at a garden store and just little bits of foliage. And yes, plastic dinosaurs. There's a time and a place for plastic dinosaurs, especially with toddlers. Um, because of the sensory options here, Again, their learning is enhanced. It's deeper between a thing with moss on it versus a just a piece of bark. They're going to be noticing that, and there could be an entire conversation about that. Here are a couple more examples of some pieces of material. Again, you'll notice here, uh, this is a little bit of water. I'm just going to put in a plug for you're always going to supervise children, even in a quarter inch of water. Don't walk away from this table. But guess what this is? Talk about recycling. This is an oil pan that you use when you change the oil on your car. You go to the automotive store, and these are brilliant. One or two toddlers at each pan. They are not highly equipped in sharing quite yet. We don't want to expect a 1 or 2 year old to not to be able to share this space. So having multiples of these spread out across an area is the best way to go for this age range. Again, we want the learning to be a positive experience, so we don't want to make the lesson about sharing space. That's not what we're trying to do here. What we want them to do is explore the materials, feel the sensory difference between dry and wet, to do what they want to do with what we provide to them. Um, the other point I just want to make here also is, where do you get all this stuff, right? You have no money. Most of our programs are on a very tight budget. Well, if you ask families and your community for what you need, 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to have some stuff for you. So I am a scrounger. I am a yard sailor. I look on Facebook Marketplace for free things, Craigslist for free things. Somebody will have these things for you. These are clearly haven't been used for oil car changes, but somebody will have the tree cookies. My advice on that front is around December 25th, there's a lot of Christmas tree stands and in parking lots. Guess what? There's an entire pile of the ends of those Christmas trees that they cut off when you take the tree home. That's where you get your tree cookies for free. I've got a huge pile of them, and I got them all for free just by asking the tree people if I could walk away with those. So become a scrounger if you're not already. It's a great skill, and the children will really appreciate the materials that you can bring in. Key to being outside and interacting with natural materials in particular is that these kinds of materials provide far more sensory input, sensory experiences than other kinds of materials that you might be using. And I'll give you a comparison in just a moment. Here, I just want to let you know what you're looking at are three girls, well dressed to be protected from the sun. I just want to point that out. They have oodles and oodles of lemons, more than they could use. That's another key point with toddlers. They have to have enough of the thing, and you better have a lot of the same thing. Because again, we aren't about trying to teach children to share at this age, but instead, if they need more lemons, you should be able to say, hey, there's more lemons right there. There's no issue. There's enough for everyone. You could have a bucket overflowing. So quantity, again, is a math concept. They will understand the sharing when they're a little older, but we're not forcing that on them now. We do need to have enough so that every child who wants to engage in exploring the lemons can do so without having to wait a turn or any of those kinds of things that we might expect of older children. So here, some of the lemons are being squished into lemon juice. And I want to just quickly remind you that while I'm showing here children essentially playing with food, they're playing with these lemons, it's very important to be culturally responsive in not typically providing food as a play material. So what I'm talking about is, say, rice and beans. It's really culturally unresponsive to bring in playing with food, if especially the children in your community or the families, that's maybe one of their primary food groups. So we don't want to we don't want to use food as a play material. So what I would do here is I would make darn sure that every bit of these lemons is used, so to speak. So I could see after she's done squishing these, we might turn it into lemonade. So it's actually something we actually eat. Or maybe you take and freeze that lemon juice and you use it in some cooking project later. But nothing should go to waste, especially if you are going to use food as a play material. I'm just saying stay away from it, other than maybe lemons. I actually dry out the peel and it makes for a great room freshener, air freshener. So those that's a plug for keeping the sensory experience at the forefront. The other thing I just want you to consider here is what if these were plastic pretend lemons? Think about the difference of the experience for these children between playing with a real lemon, a fresh lemon, versus a plastic lemon you'd find in your dramatic play area. The the information, the sensory input they get from the real thing, the real thing versus a fake pretend version of a lemon is epic. They can't be even compared. So really consider, whenever possible, to support their learning, bring in the real thing, bring in the real, well, again, bring in the real thing. To try not to use the pretend thing. It just will give them more depth of learning. Here are a couple examples of the real thing. So instead of some plastic shell, which I've actually never encountered, these are real shells. Over here we have beautifully dried out little bits of driftwood, all safe for infants and toddlers. There's no splinters. These have been bleached by the sun. They can mouth them, they can throw them, they can get them wet. They are indestructible and they're very safe. Again, ask friends, family, neighbors, community to donate these kinds of materials. You never know if somebody's a beachcomber, maybe they can bring you in a beautiful pile of driftwood. These are amazing materials for all kinds of STEAM exploration for this age group. Um, Couple more shots, and I think I'm going to almost end on time. Here are a couple examples of some play, some explorations that are happening outside. And I want to just highlight that these are experiences, especially for infants and toddlers, that would probably not happen inside. You're not going to have a nice, messy mud kitchen inside your program. You're not going to have the wall space for children to paint on big paper and make big paint movements. And that's what toddlers need. They're learning with their bodies. And at this age, they aren't about little marks on a tiny piece of paper at a table. They're about big brush strokes, big ripping feelings, big interactions, big movements with their body. So think about those kinds of experiences that if the infants and toddlers in your care can't get outside or they're not getting outside regularly, they are not having these kinds of rich, full body experiences that are can be a little messier perhaps, and that many of us just can't manage to provide when we're inside a program. So I just wanted to put a plug in there for go to your local newspaper and a newspaper that might be still in existence in your community, and they often have the ends of their big newsprint rolls that they'll give you for free. So that's a key on how to get the big paper for no cost. Okay, one other point I want to make, and then we're almost to the end of our time together. Um, the other thing that happens when children are engaged outside primarily and also with natural materials is that those materials provide challenge. They provide exactly the right challenge that the child is ready for. And the child knows when they are ready for that challenge. So Nobody is telling this child, I'm going to keep them gender neutral because we don't know what they are, so we'll call them they. This child is ready to try out this very challenging activity where they have loaded up this pretty big wheelbarrow with a lot of tree bark, loaded it up. It's very heavy. The balance is probably a little tricky, but they designed this challenge themselves. Nobody did this for them. That's where the learning happens. For infants and toddlers in particular, we have to respect and honor that they know what they want to learn about next and let them do it. Don't intervene. Say, "Oh, let me help you push that cart." Or you might comment on, "Oh, your wheelbarrow's very full. Oh, you're pushing it over there." You're just commenting on what they're doing to help them stay in their awareness of what they're doing. But you don't have to ask a bunch of questions. You can just honor their interest by commenting on what you see them doing and watching closely to see, oh, what could I maybe bring out tomorrow that might extend their learning around whatever task they've decided for themselves. Over here, good old tree stumps, they are the best thing ever invented. This provides a variety of ages with, again, a kind of they could be cruising along, just learning to walk. They could be a more advanced walker who's balancing across them. This could be a dramatic play area. All of those kinds of activities are STEAM learning. It covers all of those kinds of activities. So remember that nature provides more challenge than most of our other kinds of equipment. So I want to leave you thinking a little bit about what is in your outdoor environment, even if it's just a tiny little patio with some cement. I bet you I got some bugs out there. I bet under one of those rocks there might be a little pill bug or a worm. There's always something somewhere nearby, hopefully, that you can bring in for to enhance the children's experience and learning. Again, ask families for this. It doesn't have to require money. It just doesn't. I haven't spent a penny on any equipment for children for 40 years. So you're about free, you're about flexible. I hope that some of these images have inspired you a little bit to think about how you bring in STEAM activities into the outdoors, and then maybe someday back into the indoors. Um, by doing all of these thoughtful additions or considerations to your environment, you are supporting all areas of the infant or toddler's development. And here is again one of my favorite quotes. This is a quote by Magda Gerber, who I'm just gonna tell you who she is in case you've never heard of her. She is one of my gurus in my 40 plus year career. Magda Gerber was the founder of RAI, Resources for Infant Educators. She came from Budapest, Hungary, and she passed away some time ago, but she has taught many of us what it means to respect and to respect the youngest children on the planet. And I mean the very youngest, that they come into the world with capabilities and competencies, and it's up to us to notice those and draw them out and expand on their innate interests. So here's one of her excellent quotes. The stimuli which nature provides is unparalleled. Even the youngest infant becomes fascinated by listening to birds, watching the movements of flies, butterflies, shadows, and leaves. Air circulation, temperature change, the playfulness of sunlight and shadow are strong stimuli to the senses. That's from Magda's book, Dear Parent, Caring for Infants with Respect. I highly recommend it. It is from 2003, but it's still a brilliant resource. So she's really reminding us that the very youngest children that we care for need this kind of benefit of experience in nature. These last couple slides that I'm going to share with you are some of the resources that I have found super helpful. I believe that you will have access to the recording of this session, as well as potentially the PowerPoint handout. So the material is on there. You could also be taking a quick screenshot of or a photo of these resources. This is my agency, PITC. Um, and we are here truly to support any program, as I said earlier, in California that cares for infants and toddlers, and primarily at no cost to the programs. I also happen to be our online program manager, so I organize and coordinate our three courses that we offer every year. And I just want to share with you a very exciting thing. On August 11th, we are launching our first PITC Infant Toddler Group Care course online in Spanish. So I'm very excited about that. Um, you can reach out to me for any new information or more information about that, and that is our website. I mentioned this resource. I want to call out this very, very brilliant article from NAYC on STEAM with infants and toddlers. The ECLKC Center has excellent resources on this topic as well. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my button. Here's a couple more references. That's the website of the program I mentioned earlier. If you don't know about Rusty Keeler, he's a brilliant resource that very inspiring podcasts. He does all kinds of work with programs across the United States on designing rich and challenging outdoor environments. Not so many infant toddler, but he's still got good ideas. And last but not least, a couple more articles on that have to do with this topic of outdoor play in nature and how it supports STEAM learning. And with that, I'm going to just put my info up on the screen, and we have about 3 minutes for potential questions, and that's very unusual for me. My only problem here is that I can't find my chat. Let me see if I can find the chat. I, I'm not sure I can uncover the chat. Anyway, I'll pause here so you can get my information down. And I can't stay later because we end in 2 minutes. I'm so sorry I can't. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna maybe stop sharing real quick. Okay. There's the chat. That's the chat. If anybody here still has a quick question for me, you can put it in the chat. I'd be happy to try and respond real fast. It's so unusual for me to have any time at the end of the presentation, but thank you for your kind words. I feel very passionate about getting our very youngest children outside. They cannot live indoors 40 to 50 hours a week. It's not good for them, and it's not good for you. So reach out to us. I'm always happy to help you think about how to get those babies outside in a safe and ongoing. Oh, the webinar Spanish course is not a webinar. It's actually a full 19-week online course held in Canvas, the online platform. It's not a webinar, so it's not a live course. It's what we call asynchronous course. So reach out to me at my contact information. I'm happy to share with you more. Yeah, we're very excited about being able to offer it in Spanish. I won't be the instructor because I'm not bilingual, but it will be. How do I deal with 36-month-old with allergies that are in California? You work closely with their family, that's for sure. You work closely with their family. think long and hard about the plants that you have in your outdoor space for sure. Um, there are some alternative therapies that I've explored for allergies that, I'm not going to endorse that, but I think you have to be super in touch with their family to decide what is it they're specifically allergic to. If that hasn't been identified, then you're really kind of working in the blind, so to speak. So making sure it's not a food allergy, but more of a outdoor pollen allergy of some sort. I'm not an expert in allergies. I'm sorry. Um, all right, I think we're supposed to end. We're 1 minute after. Thank you, everyone, very much. I hope that you'll reach out to us at PITC if we can be of any support to you, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Take care. Thank you.